Let's talk about it, man.
Man.
Turn it on. Light it up.
I just had a baby. Yeah. My wife had the baby. I want to clarify that. I actually hate it when men take credit for what women go through in childbirth. You know what I'm talking about? These fucking new age dudes out here are like, we're pregnant. We had a baby. It's like, shut the fuck up. You did nothing. You're being insulting. It's like when my wife says, we made a lot of money, you know.
In terms of your comedy, 1 year after becoming a parent, what has becoming a parent now helped you with in terms of your comedy and helped you kind of see when you're developing new material?
I haven't written a single joke since I've had my daughter, I think.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. Or since the tour stopped.
Yeah,
so now it's just like all focus on trying to make her laugh. And yeah, I don't know. The world gets really small.
Mm-hmm.
It gets really small. It has made me reflect on comedy and comedy about kids a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I was growing up, my favorite comedians would do this comedy about how they kind of hated their kids. And when you first have a kid, you're going to be shocked at how cliche all your feelings are, especially when you're a writer, you're a comedian. We think that we have a different take on something. This take is so different, it's worth writing down, it's worth saying on stage. And the second you have a kid, it's every feeling you have is the hackiest feeling ever. You're like, oh, whenever they laugh, it's the best laugh in the world. When they smile at you, you melt. You'll do anything for them.
We're in sort of this new era of comedy. We're talking about being a parent and talking about it and being open and honest about not only just having kids, and once you have the kid, but even going through the process of conceiving and all that, which is it's the heart of your special. Yeah. So what was it like being that vulnerable about something that was so personal?
Cathartic. It was nice. In the beginning, it was nice. Because there were stages. So when I first started writing it, I wasn't even writing an hour per se. I was just kind of talking about what I was going through. I was just getting back on stage. I'd taken some time off from the last special. And then we were starting to get pregnant, or we were trying to get pregnant, I remember. And I was coming back from Burning Man, and I was going to her mom's 50th or 60th. I don't know what the big birthday. It was a big birthday for her mom. I'm gonna fuck that up by a decade, and that's gonna be horrible. But yeah. And I remember that was when we first started trying, and I remember doing it, and then afterwards being all right, it was probably I was like, okay, it's probably okay if we don't get pregnant this time, and just because I didn't know what was in my bloodstream at that point, the kid would have been half oxy or some shit, you know what I mean? I'm in Burning Man for a week, and then I'm going right to make a baby.
Yeah.
So it didn't happen that time. I was okay, and then another month went by, it didn't happen. Another one went by, it didn't happen, and then I was like, oh shit, is it hard to get pregnant? I couldn't fathom it was hard, My whole life has been about trying to not get women pregnant. Yeah. And the amount of stress I would go through and plan Bs and all this other shit.
And going through it and writing jokes about it and talking about it, how do you feel this special, which is a big, it's a small word, but a big meaning, life, how does it raise the bar for your comedy, do you feel?
I don't know. I'm always just trying to do something different. Every special, I try to do a little something different, something I haven't done before. I think that's the exciting thing for me. With this one, I was never personal in my comedy at all. I didn't think my life was interesting. I thought my opinions on the world or culture were more interesting than my life. So I was I'm not going to talk about it. And then when this started happening, it was tough for us to get pregnant. It was the only thing I could think of. I just couldn't think of anything else. I couldn't think of some weird topical joke about it. Nothing really mattered. And then talking about this got really exciting on stage. I was all right, maybe I can tell stories. I never really told stories. So I was what if I can make this a whole story? And then once I felt like it could be, I didn't want to tell anybody it was a story. Because I didn't want one-man show expectations. And I wanted them to come in thinking this is hard-hitting stand-up for an hour and have that expectation, but see if I could have a story layered into it.
You mentioned, thinking about jokes as you're living, and I think that's obviously a huge part of being a comic is when something goes wrong or something crazy happens, you're oh, there's a joke there somewhere.
Yeah.
Your whole bit about the indignities of collecting a sperm sample.
Oh, yeah.
As you were going through it, did you think...
Eloquently put, the indignities of collecting a sperm sample. That will be my caption. Yeah. Did I think of what when I
Did
was
you
in
think,
there?
okay, like there's got to be a joke here somewhere?
I think yeah, sometimes you are. Sometimes you're in a moment, you're like, oh, this is kind of funny. And then sometimes you're just talking about on stage, you're like really frustrated by something, you're embarrassed by something, and you feel very vulnerable. So you're like, okay, let me share this, and then maybe I'll find something funny in it.
I walk out the room, I see the nurse, and it is this meatball of an Italian guy. Chest hair coming out the scrubs. He's got a gold pepper chain on. He's not even wearing Crocs. He got on Jordan 3s, okay? I'm like, this guy does not work here full time. This is a hustle so he could steal fentanyl. There's something going on. I walk up to him, low key. I get about 5 feet away. He looks up, he sees me. He goes, Schulz! Let me tell you something. The last place you want to get recognized is the sperm clinic.
And there's other parts where you're so miserable.
Right.
You're just so miserable in these moments. You can't even think about comedy just yet. So I think it was both.
Yeah.
For sure. The stress of and the strain on a relationship is tricky. Mm-hmm. I think that's, and then you probably don't want to tell your friends about it because, there's a pressure that you also feel like you want to protect your partner. Right? So you're like, okay, I don't want to talk to them about it. And then, I don't know if you talk to a therapist, like now there's nobody you can talk to about this but your partner who's also stressed by it, and you don't want them to stress because every doctor's like, well, if you're stressed out, it might not work.
Yeah.
So now you're all alone with these thoughts.
Right.
And that's something I noticed when I started doing the material, is like guys would come up to me after shows, like not even on the road, like it'd be in the city, and they'd be like, oh, that was some really funny stuff you were doing right there. And I was like, oh, thanks, man. And they're like, yeah, you should keep talking about that. Like, they might not feel comfortable to admit what they were going through, but to me, it made me realize, holy shit, is this like a common thing? I had no fucking clue. I thought, and I said it in the special, but I 100% thought the second I had sex with a girl without a condom, she would be pregnant.
All right, 100%.
That's what I've been told my whole life. I see every one of my basketball heroes has 11 kids.
Yeah.
And I'm like, bro, I prayed the night before we got our tests.
Really?
I prayed. I said, if there's anything wrong, please make it my fault.
Yeah.
And then God was like, bet. I'm a very competitive person. Like the second I had the whole thing like lined up, I had like, once he said my sperm sucked, I just wanted to disprove. I remember I had a doctor when I was a kid tell me that I was going to be 5'9", and I remember looking at the doctor like, remember you said that shit. Remember you said that shit.
Go back over and tower over him.
I can't wait. No. So it was like, I had like a weekend ready where I was going to take fucking Blue Chew for the whole weekend, and I was just going to go at it, and it was like guaranteed, we're going to get one in there, right? We only need one. And the doctor said, he was like, you could try for a year or longer, whatever you want, but what I would do is weigh the emotional cost. And sometimes this, creates a lot of struggle in relationships. So he goes, if the money is not an issue for you guys, just weigh that emotional cost.
Yeah.
And like my wife would cry every single month. Like every single time she'd take the test, negative, tears. And you feel fucking horrible.
Yeah.
And now I know it's me.
Yeah.
Before I thought it was her.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know that guys could have anything wrong with it.
Right.
And then so once, I saw that and I was like, all right, let's run it.
Yeah.
Because it's all your ego outside of that.
Now, IVF, very hard for the woman, okay? Very expensive for the man. I don't think we talk about that enough. The financial trauma associated with it. $30,000 for a kid. Yeah, I started looking up human trafficking just to see.
You have this daughter in your arms, like.
It's the best thing in the world. It's so cliche, but it's the best thing in the world. I don't want to be here. I appreciate your time. Don't get me wrong.
No, hey, I appreciate it.
I don't want to be. I'm seeing my daughter on FaceTime, and like she walks up and she taps her forehead on the phone because I kiss her on her forehead. And so she's like trying to make me kiss her through the phone, which is a Soulja Boy lyric, if I'm not mistaken.
It's a hot track.
That guy was a genius ahead of his time. No, and then, and yeah, you're just like, okay, I don't want to, what am I doing?
And I mean, I think for people that follow your podcast and all your content and stuff, it was also probably a left turn because it's not political in any way, this special at all.
Yeah. Not really.
Yeah.
No.
So I mean, given the year that you had, like wrapping up last year into this year, it's like you've already had, I think, a bigger year than
Yeah,
like
wild.
most comedians. You've interviewed the president.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you because comedy seemed to play a pretty fair major role in the outcome of this election.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk about it because
Some people think.
I mean, I wanted to know what you think. Do you think comedy helped get Trump elected?
That's interesting. Did comedy do it? You mean by like going on the podcast?
Yeah, by
specifically?
podcast. I mean, he went on several, obviously Rogan and Theo and you.
I have a maybe more humble take than some,
Okay.
which is I don't think we influenced the election at all. I think people were going to vote this way no matter what. And I think seeing him on certain podcasts made them feel more comfortable voicing how they were already going to vote.
Oh, okay.
Like I don't think very many people were like watching, Trump on mine or Rogan or Theo, and then they flipped on him 100%. That's just me. I don't know if we have that kind of power.
Yeah.
But what it might do is make you feel more confident publicly sharing how you feel about Trump, right? Because maybe in those situations he feels a little less radioactive.
Yeah.
Well,
I also think it's interesting because even though your fans go across generations and stuff, there's a lot of younger people that follow you that probably weren't as engaged in any election talk or politics, but like comedy maybe offers an entry point into that.
Yeah.
Or podcasting. Do you think about that? Like, the influence that you have in terms of bringing people to.
For me, I don't really care about politics. I just care about culture, but sometimes politics is the reflection of culture.
Yeah.
So that's when I start to kind of key in on it. Like if people are really caring about something, that's important to me. And then every 4 years, they really start to care.
Right.
And then they'll move away and they'll pop up and down for the next 2.5, 3. And then we'll go through this shit again. It's like now we're the pendulum has swung the other way. So we're out of like the censorship era, Before that, maybe we were in the censorship era. And then comedians are usually the first ones to complain about it because it kind of affects the way that we do our thing. And that's happened throughout history. And usually you get like really prolific comedians that come out of these times where there's a lot of censorship. And they write these great bits about it, Carlin being one of them. Even Eddie, like people in Pryor, the way that they would talk about them were like, I can't believe they're saying these things. Like, this is crazy. So I think the censorship in a way is kind of like good for comedy, but comedians speak about it. And then comedy having a boom, and that's a reflection of, the most influential person on the planet, Joe Rogan, being a comedian and loving comedians and putting comedy at the forefront, of his interests. There's also like a social media aspect in this where it's like everybody wants a funny tweet, a funny picture, a funny meme. Like people, there's like currency in being funny,
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like this perfect storm.
What was the hardest part about it, like prepping for that interview?
For Trump?
Yeah.
It's like calling his. For me, it was just like, I just want to understand like who he is. So I spoke to some people close to him. I spoke to Dana White for a while, and I spoke to Don Jr. for a while. I just like, tell me story. Like I want personal stories. Like tell me your relationship. Like you don't have to tell me who he is or who you think he is. Like tell me these moments that have happened between you guys, and you'll find a lot about that. The goal is with every person I sit down with, like, I don't want to like toot our own horn on the pod, but like, I think we got like the best interview with a lot of people specifically because we're just trying to find out who you are and make you comfortable enough to hang with us.
All right.
We're just trying to have the best hang on the internet. That's it. I hate that I even have to mention this, but it's like so stupid. Like, and we offered tons of Democrats to come on, but they did not, Cuban came on. I'll say that. And then Cuban was trying to push them. They're like, hey, I just did it. It was awesome. And he's like a big surrogate for Kamala.
Yeah.
And he was trying to push and try to get everybody else's team. But
they just said no, or was it just like?
I think they're in a situation where they're playing like a little bit of prevent defense.
Oh, I see.
And I think this is a tricky thing for. Again, I speak about these things culturally. I don't really understand politics, but I understand like the people's reaction to things. And I think Americans, we like risk. We like people who are going to take a risk. And I think that that's why we were seduced by Bernie, because he looks like he was taking risk.
Yeah.
Like, he's out there like, fuck the billionaires, fuck these big corporations. They're taking your money. I want to get your money back. And all of us were like, yo, he's going to get killed. Like, this guy's fire. Like,
all the way left.
Right? But like, in a way, I think that's the tricky thing for the Democrats. Again, as I analyze it, I'm like, they could win this so easily if they made this about class. If they made it a class war, they win in a fucking heartbeat. It's so easy. But it seems like they're not willing to do that because I think they have very wealthy people donating a lot of money to them and they don't want to ruffle those feathers. So now you have to make it about identity politics because that's the only other thing. They would win in a heartbeat if they made it about class. I mean, Bernie, I think you need a young Bernie. Look at AOC. Like, again, I don't care what you think about her politics, but like there are people that in her district voted for her and Trump, right? And I think it's because people see her as working class and actually want to help the working class. Regardless if you think her like philosophy is right about it. Like that you could disagree on based on what side of the party you're on. I don't care.
Right.
But the people there are like, nah, she wants to help. She's trying to do stuff for me. And I think that, I don't know if Kamala convinced people last election of that. I was wondering, like, why wouldn't the Democrats come on the interviews? And the ones that they did do, like the ones that Kamala did, like they really seemed like prepared and contrived. And I actually had a lot of empathy for the situation that they're in. Because when you're the party of progress, right, the idea is, and we need progress. We literally need it. We don't get here without the progressive party, right? Like, women aren't going to be working without someone going, hey, I think they should work.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, we need these things. So, but when you're on the party of progress, you have the I don't want to call it the burden, but the burden of like pushing things further and getting more equity for people, right? And unfortunately, in that situation, you're terrified of rubbing people the wrong way.
Right.
Hurting them without even knowing that you're going to hurt them. Some flippant comment that you make on a podcast all of a sudden ostracizes this group that you're actually trying to protect, right?
Yeah.
So now, can you really talk to me for 2.5 hours on a pod when I'm making jokes about random shit? I'm talking about this, a trans thing, that. I'm just busting balls. I'm just hanging out like we would hang out and have a beer, as normal people do, Democrats, Republicans, as normal people do who aren't being recorded. But during that interview, every second you're like, am I going to lose those constituents? Am I going to lose these people? Am I going to offend people? They're like, I can't. Whereas the Republicans, they don't have that burden.
Yeah.
They're not going, let's go progressive. They're going, let's back this shit up.
I see.
So they could say whatever. Because they're already like, yo, we're too far this way. So you can hang out and you can shoot the shit and you can say whatever the fuck you want. What I want there to be is like a Democrat who's just on some don't give a fuck shit. Doesn't mean you have to be offensive, but be equally as radical. Like, I want housing is an issue, right? Like, housing prices need to come down.
Right.
Talk some shit. Like, Republicans just say wild shit. Trump is just like, yo, I think we're taking Greenland. I want a Democrat to be like, yo, I'm taking that plot of land over there and I'm building affordable housing. We're building 10,000 units on that shit. Just say it.
Just say it. Yeah.
And then young people will be like, wait a minute, that actually sounds like really good. Like, I can't afford my rent. I would love to live in that area. Can you even do that? Just start being radical.
Right.
Shake shit up. Be exciting.
Right.
I think that's what we want. Take a little risk. Stop playing it safe. The more you play it safe, the less relatable you are to me.
I think kind of what you're talking about with just having conversations that are frank and you're not being afraid to challenge each other. Like what you do with Charlemagne on the pod.
Dude, it's the best.
What's that like?
We've been doing this for over 10 years.
Yeah.
And it's just like just now, because of kind of like where he's always been this like crazy superstar, you know, but like maybe I've gotten a little bit bigger. And then now you could see like the political websites like looking at our stuff and basically watching the pod, and they're like clipping it. Yeah, we say at the beginning of every podcast, just, you know, we are not mature enough to have this conversation. Like, you shouldn't even be paying attention to us. But every single day, Fox is going to clip this, and then CNN's going to clip that, and then.
Yeah.
But the thing that I like about it is here we are, these guys that like, we might disagree in terms of, you know, politics about some things, but like we're friends for over a decade. And it's just the proof, like we don't need this, I don't want to use black and white, but we don't need America to be so divided. We hate each other and we're about to fight. It's like, we actually can be best friends and we can talk shit and, you know, do whatever the fuck we've been doing for 10 years on the podcast, while also disagreeing slightly on politics.
I wanted to end on something kind of silly.
Yeah, go.
I've been following your career a long time. I mean, basically growing up to also watching Geico, the
Yeah,
Quick shows and everything.
that's where I met Charlotte. You know.
Yeah. Pre-mustache. When did the mustache
Look,
come
not
about?
all of us can grow a beautiful thick beard.
mean,
Okay,
yeah, but
some
you
of
got-
us, this is all we got.
Like, what inspired your facial hair and also your change to do that? Yeah.
I mean, I have no clue. I think this is all I got, and I think I'm like getting older, and I was like, all right, maybe I could.
And I mean, to be fair, it's a
Yeah.
great mustache.
Thank you, brother.
You
I
know what I
appreciate
mean? Like,
that. Thank you.
it's like there is a fine art because you can't go too thin
Can't go too
because
thin.
you're gonna look like the principal of like Epstein Elementary.
yeah,
You can't go too thick because you look just
Can't
like,
go too short.
oh, that's a hard day at the
that's-
supermarket.
Yeah,
You know?
that's a big no-no.
A lot of rough looks.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's through all of the iterations and specials and everything, like you've developed something that I think that a lot of people obviously are responding to and paying attention to. So, hats off. Sure.
Absolutely. Thanks for
Yeah.
having me. Thanks for your
Yeah.
time.